You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hello there. We're about to get the first 2 episodes of the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney+. And I thought we should do a primer on old Ben, because there is so much more to the character than what we've seen in just a handful of movies. You know, putting the legend stuff aside, there's still a ton of canonical stories that make up exactly who this man is. So much so that I could only condense so much of it down. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you about the great Obi-Wan Kenobi on today's Dan Wickline Show. Stay tuned. All right, hello all you happy people. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. And today, like I said, we're going to do a deep dive into the history of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And no, we're not going to be able to cover everything, even putting the legend stuff aside, the stuff that's no longer canonical, just focusing on the canon stuff. Still, way more than I could put together for a 1-hour show because of all the Clone Wars stuff. But before we take a dive into the Star Wars lore, I want to take a moment and acknowledge the passing of actor Ray Liotta, who died today at age 67. Now, the actor is famous for his roles in Goodfellas, Field of Dreams, and just a ton more. It's said that he died in his sleep last night in the Dominican Republic, where he was filming a movie called Dangerous Waters. He was still working regularly for, going on. Even at 67, he had a bunch of projects still in the hopper coming up. Yeah, he was an iconic actor who brought every bit of New Jersey with him to roles. And we want to offer our condolences to his family, friends, and fans. So rest in peace, Ray Liotta. All right. Hello, Cool Gamer and Josh. Glad to see you. Now, Star Wars Celebration is going on this weekend, so news is trickling out. And some of the interesting things that have come out involved some of the upcoming Disney Plus series. Now, they haven't said anything about movies yet, and we know there's still the Kevin Feige movie, the Taika Waititi movie, but none of the information about that has come out yet, and they may save it for later in the weekend. What we have heard about today, first off, is a new series that we've gotten kind of hinted at. This is information on John Watts' series. John Watts being the director of the Spider-Man films for Sony and Marvel. Well, he's going to produce this series along with Christopher Ford, Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni. And it's called Skeleton Crew. And it will star actor Jude Law. And it's about a group of 10-year-olds who accidentally get lost in the galaxy. So I think what happens is they end up on a spaceship and end up somewhere in deep space, and they got to figure out how to get home. That's what it seems to be. Now, it's expected to release in 2023. So they're moving forward on this quickly, which could explain why Watt dropped out of doing the Fantastic Four movie, taking a step away from superheroes to do a sci-fi thing. Makes sense. Now, having it tied to Favreau and Filoni, most of the projects they're involved in are set in this specific timeline. So, now it doesn't say if they're Jedi younglings or just 10-year-old kids. But it could be Jedi. But yeah, so I have a feeling this is going to be, no, I don't think it would be younglings, because it would be around the time of The Mandalorian if it's, the Favreau and Filoni era. Speaking of which, on The Mandalorian, that's going to air starting February of 2023. So we get Andor is going to premiere August 31st of this year, and it's a 12-part series. We'll get 2 episodes to start with, but it's a 12-part series, and it's set for 2 seasons, 12 episodes each, and it will end. The end of the series will be right up against the start of Rogue One. So we're absolutely connecting all of Andor's life when they're done with this. So there won't be anything else that Diego Luna could, squeak out of this character. He's getting all of it. Also, we know that Ahsoka will appear. The Ahsoka Tano series is also set for 2023. So we're getting Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor this year, and we'll be getting The Mandalorian and Ahsoka next year, and possibly the 2nd season of Andor. We'll have to see how quickly they can turn that one around. All right. There's also a trailer out there for Andor, and there's a trailer out there for the new Willow series. So I haven't had a chance to watch the Willow series. The Andor series is interesting because it looks like there's some familiar faces. I haven't had a chance to really look because I literally got to see it right before the show. Stellan Skarsgård is in it. We know that. Or at least we see him in the video. Also, there's an actor in there who I think might be from Game of Thrones and played Black Bolt's brother on the Inhumans. And I cannot pronounce it. It's like it's a Eowyn. It's like a Gaelic name or Celtic name. So, but yeah. So I really want to see the cast list for that. I think it's going to be very interesting. But let's go ahead and talk about Obi-Wan, because literally I started doing the research into it just to kind of put everything together. And I put together 2,700 words, which is usually more than enough to fill up the hour. And I barely got to cover the Clone Wars era. So shows you how much on Obi-Wan there really is. So moving on to the main topic. Most of you know Kenobi is played by either Alec Guinness, Sir Alec Guinness, or Ewan McGregor. And it's kind of funny, when McGregor is playing Ewan Ran, as at the JD, see if you can find out if he is in Andor. I'd appreciate that. So when McGregor I saw McGregor on the Jimmy Kimmel show the other night, and he was talking about how he had to go back and watch the trailers and watch the original 3 movies and a bunch of Alec Guinness movies so he could get the voice back, because he's not doing an accent. He's doing an imitation of Alec Guinness. And Alec Guinness has a very unique speech pattern, cadence, stuff that McGregor does a really good job of mimicking. So when you see Ewan McGregor, you're not really seeing Ewan McGregor. You're seeing Ewan McGregor pretending to be Alec Guinness. Now, Kathleen Kennedy came out recently and said that she thinks recasting iconic Star Wars characters with younger actors doesn't work. I couldn't disagree more, because that's exactly what they did here. They're not using a de-aged Alec Guinness or using footage of him from all the movies he's done prior. They're using a new actor. Well, I think Aiden Ehrenreich and Donald Glover did a good job in Solo. I don't really have a problem with the Solo movie, so I think Kathleen Kennedy is completely wrong. And I actually, at this point, would prefer them recasting, because there is that odd feel when they do all of the computer-generated stuff. You know, that uncanny valley they always talk about. So, plus, I think McGregor has made the character his own. Looks like now he's doing a show in Gaelic for BBC, apparently. Okay. Then I'll have to watch that trailer again and see who the Imperial officer is that keeps popping up. So I think McGregor has made the character his own, and there's this huge anticipation for the series. And it's going to cover the time in between the prequels and the original trilogy. But let's kind of give you some background. Assuming that, you know, this is what you need to know about the character going into this series. You don't necessarily need to know what happens to him after. We do know, but Obi-Wan was born on the planet Stujan in 57 BBY, which is the Battle of Yavin, or before the Battle of Yavin. They use basically the blowing up of the original Death Star as the center point of time telling in Star Wars. So everything is either before that moment or after that moment, ABY or BBY. So 57 years before they blew up the Death Star, which means that Ben Kenobi was 57 years old when he was running around the Death Star and had his final confrontation with Darth Vader. Alec Guinness at the time was 63. Obi-Wan was deemed Force sensitive at an extremely young age, like prior to 6 months old. Yeah, he was a rough 63. Yeah, I mean, you look at Tom Cruise, who's going to be 60, and there's a night and day difference between Tom Cruise and Alec Guinness when he was in Star Wars. And there's only like 3 or 4 years difference between them. So Kenobi was discovered as being a Force sensitive before he was even 6 months old, and he was taken from his home planet to the Jedi Temple in Coruscant, where he began his training very young. And as a youngling, he was placed in a group called the Sybuk clan, along with Garen and Pre, who would become his friends, and they would pop up in some of his later adventures. And he was training in basic force techniques by the age of 3. His early training was overseen by Grandmaster Yoda, and while his instructions in the art of lightsaber combat was taught by Jedi Master Sin Dralig. He also studied meditation, which was actually kind of interesting because, you know, the whole meditation and peace thing, his reputation was for being rebellious and a rule breaker. That's true. All that time in the desert is rough on the skin. All that sand, yep. Now, because he was this known as rebellious figure, a lot of potential masters passed on him, didn't want to take him as a Padawan, which made Yoda kind of think outside the box. So instead of going to the normal ones, he went looking for an unorthodox Jedi, someone who thought differently and didn't necessarily cling to all the rules of the Jedi Code. So that's what led him to Qui-Gon Jinn. Now, at the age of 12, Obi-Wan became the Padawan of Qui-Gon. And he attempted to adapt his teaching methods to Obi-Wan's strengths, but later on he would kind of consider that he had failed to do that. He didn't really think he had done well. Now, the Padawan built his own lightsaber as a mix of Qui-Gon's hilt, the hilt on Qui-Gon's lightsaber, yet added some of his own touches to show off his personality. Now, Qui-Gon continued to train him as in lightsaber combat, but unlike most Jedi, Qui-Gon kept him from choosing a specific specialty. There are different specificities when you're to Jedi training, how you fight, and he didn't want him to pick one. He wanted to keep it open and learn a bunch of different things. And Qui-Gon was quite proud of Kenobi's lightsaber talents and would spar with him often. Obi-Wan would spend hours and hours training in the dojos, honing the different techniques that he was taught. Now, Kenobi's rebellious ways led him to be kind of different than his master, turning the young man into a very serious and respectful Jedi out of spite, it seems. You know, Qui-Gon kind of focused on the present, the now, and the past with prophecies and stuff, while Obi-Wan always looked at the bigger picture and looked at the future. Jin's main side focus were these ancient Jedi prophecies that he was researching, which Kenobi ended up having to help him with. And by studying these holocrons pertaining to the prophecies, he ended up learning Old Alderaanian, because that's what most of these holocrons were written in. So when they talk about the prophecy of the Chosen One, this is an area that Qui-Gon was considered an expert. It was his main focus of study. And Kenobi knows a lot about it because he was assisting in that study. Now, during one of their missions, the pair traveled to the planet Kashyyyk, which, of course, is the home of the Wookiees. And this was during their Life Day holiday, their Life Day celebration. Now, Jin used the trip to kind of teach Kenobi about the Wookiees' way of life and harmony and how it mirrored the connection to the Force. During the event, though, a group of Trandoshan hunters, if you're not familiar with the Trandoshans, they're the Bosk, the bounty hunter, is a Trandoshan. The Trandoshan hunters ended up capturing several Wookiees, and Qui-Gon got caught up in one of the nets as well and was taken away. Now, he was pretty confident that his Padawan would find a way to free him. Obi-Wan was kind of reluctant to get the Wookiees involved because he didn't want to put any more in danger. But he worked with a friend of Qui-Gon's name, Brennan, and the plan was, I love this plan. Kenobi surrendered to the Trandoshans. Just walked up, went, hey, no, I'm giving myself up. And claims that without his master, he would be no match for the Trandoshans. But all he was doing was basically distracting the leader of the Trandoshans while he subtly used the Force to open Qui-Gon's cage. Now, once freed, they both were armed with lightsabers and joined by a group of Wookiees who rushed in at that moment. They attacked the hunters and freed all the captives. But once everybody was free, they left the Trandoshans in peace to leave the planet. They were choosing to follow the Life Day teachings and resolve the situation with no further violence. Now, Obi-Wan asked the same question that I asked when I saw this. Why didn't Qui-Gon free himself? The Force thing, could have just done it himself. And Qui-Gon explained that he saw it as a learning experience and that he would gain insight into the life of a Wookiee. I think I would have slapped my master at that point if I was Obi-Wan. You let yourself be captured? All right, folks, we're going to take our first break, and we'll come back with more of Obi-Wan Kenobi right after this.
Get the inside scoop on everything happening at the experience every week. Join our mailing list by scanning the QR code at the bottom of the screen and then watching your email inbox.
Comic Collectibles is here for you every Wednesday with AR Comics for two very important reasons. To sell you rare, one-of-a-kind comics that you'll love, and to confuse AR with old man talk. You see, Rex and John are, how should I put this, ancient as the roots of the mountains. So every week, Rex and John fill in AR in yet another area of pop culture that he missed because he's too young, just didn't have the time, or just really doesn't care about. It's a real public service they provide. Come buy some super rare and unique comics, while old men explain long-dead sci-fi shows to a younger man making that confused puppy face. Every Wednesday from 6 to 8 Eastern with Rex, John, and AR Comics. Comic Collectibles on The Experience. Comic culture and sales.
Who would win, Batman or Superman? It's the age-old debate, except it's so much more complicated than that. Nerd Killer Warfare every week on The Experience is your chance to debate other nerds in the questions we've all been asking for years, except we take those debates and turn them up to 11. Go to bit.ly/EXP casting or scan the QR code to be part of the show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We are talking Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi Master. General Kenobi at one point. Yep, that's him. Young Jedi at that point, with the still got the Padawan braid. But stick around after the show. We got a lot of great stuff here on The Experience tonight. We have What's in the Box immediately following the show, where Miss Jen wanders out to the warehouse, grabs a box, brings it in, and sells whatever is in it. Hopefully it's something extremely fun. I'm still waiting for the day she ends up bringing in her lunch or ends up grabbing that box of just trash they forgot to throw out. Something like that. It should be fun. At 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, we have Space Cadets with Jenna, Shanice, and Bean as they talk about absurd moments in comic books and comic movies. Then after that, we have the game that I refuse to say the name of at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 Eastern as they take comic book things and try to battle them against each other. And that'll wrap it up for the night. So let's see. We got more comments. She could sell it, though. She's that good. She could. She absolutely could. I thought the topic was how to live and love like a wick. Love the WICK-LINE. Now that we'll save that one for later because Kenobi tonight. I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. We'll talk about all that. The Karen feeding of a WICK-LINE next week. All right, so we had just left Kashyyyk, where Kenobi and Jin had helped some people. Then we end up with probably one of the most important storylines from the Clone Wars involving Kenobi and Jin. This is around 42 BBY. They spent a year on the planet Mandalore protecting Duchess Satine Kreese from insurgents who were threatening her world. Now, bounty hunters were sent after them, forcing them to live as fugitives, basically on the run. And the two of them, Satine and Obi-Wan, basically had to work as a team to stay ahead of the danger. And in that time, they fell in love. But despite his feelings, he continued with his training and was eventually assigned a different mission once the Duchess was safe. Now, Kenobi regretted leaving her, but chose to follow the Jedi Code, which he had sworn to live by. And Kreese, she stayed and led her people, but she had wanted to ask Kenobi to stay, but knew it would have been a very difficult choice. So, yeah, that love-lost thing, the two of them. Satine is the sister of Bo-Katan Kreese, who has appeared in the Clone Wars and on The Mandalorians, and we just learned today during Celebration that she will be back and be a major character in the third season of The Mandalorian, which means that they're probably going back after to recapture Mandalore, or to repopulate Mandalore, however you want to put it. So she's still after the Darksaber. Now, in 40 BB, she didn't seem like she was okay with the breakup when they reunited in Clone Wars. Yeah, I don't think she was okay with it. I think she wanted him to choose to stay. And he chose being a Jedi. But she dies, so he doesn't have to worry about it too much. That's cold, I know. All right. 2 years after that, in 40 BBY, they went on a mission to the planet Teth, and the pair were sent to investigate a disappearance of an agricultural shipment. Now, this quickly led to a violent confrontation with Wenbo the Hutt and his crew, and in the chaos, Jin felt that Kenobi wasn't really responding to his instructions and felt that they were being overwhelmed and decided they needed to escape. So he sent his Padawan off to get a ship, but Kenobi was stopped and taken hostage in the hangar by Wanbo's major domo, Thuribil. Star Wars names, man. Wanbo, Thuribil. It's me with the lightsaber. I'm really going to miss her. Nice. So, to get his Padawan back, Jin went and captured Wanbo himself and used the Hutt to trade for his apprentice back. Then once they got off the planet, the two tried to stay lighthearted about it, but it was obviously they weren't clicking. And back on Coruscant, Qui-Gon went to the council and talked about his concerns about his communication with his Padawan and his concern that they hadn't formed a stronger bond. And he felt that perhaps he wasn't the right choice to be a master for Kenobi. But during the discussion, the council kind of sidestepped it and invited him to join the Jedi Council, which would then mean that Obi-Wan would then get reassigned to a new master, because when you're on the council, you don't take a Padawan. So Jin said he would meditate on it before giving an answer. And they were given an assignment while he was supposed to be meditating on it. And this is interesting because it kind of gives us our first look at one of the prequel villains. This is Jin and Kenobi were requested by Lord Regent Rael Averross on the planet Pajal to help deal with a group called the Opposition. Now, it was a group leading violent protests against the Governance Treaty that was about to be ratified. It would end the absolutist monarchy and open up hyperspace routes in the area. Well, they were also instructed to protect the Crown Prince Fanray until she could sign the treaty at her coronation. Because the Republic wanted this treaty because they needed those hyperspace routes. Well, while traveling to the planet, Jyn informed Kenobi that Averross had actually trained under a Jedi named Count Dooku, who later we know. So now they were regally greeted by Fanry upon the arrival, and once briefed on the situation, they got straight to work. This included meeting with some gemstone thieves on the planet's moon, because that's where the opposition was supposed to be hiding. So they got these thieves to help them track down the opposition. Now, they were also invited to participate in some of the planet's ceremonies leading up to the coronation. And in one of them, the princess is attacked by a crab droid that Kenobi is able to destroy. But when they examine the droid, it becomes obvious that whoever sabotaged it was actually someone in the palace and not a member of the opposition. Now, eventually the Jedi would meet with the head of the opposition, a woman named Halen Azuka, who claimed that her group were just performance artists and were being framed for the attacks. With this knowledge, Qui-Gon Jinn refused to ratify the treaty at the upcoming coronation, and Azuka was able to supply evidence that the attacks originated from the Royal Guard under the orders of Captain Darren and Fanry herself. Now, while he was getting this information, Kenobi was ordered to ratify the treaty on the behalf of the Republic. But during the coronation, after she got her crown, Fanry violently seized power and claimed herself to be an absolute monarch, preventing the signing of the treaty and basically decrying democracy altogether. She then ordered the death of all those who betrayed her, including Kenobi. But Kenobi, of course, was able to take out Captain Darren, and protect all those that from the Republic that had sent, while Fanry escaped. But she was eventually forced to surrender and abdicate her throne, and the Jedi helped establish a democratic assembly to lead the planet. Now, the importance of this mission was it was the first time Kenobi thought he and Qui-Gon had really worked well together, and he could finally see what Yoda had in mind with pairing them. You know, basically, with how unorthodox Qui-Gon was, Kenobi's rebellious nature would lead him to try to be the perfect Jedi instead, to really follow the code. So, Yoda's playing mind tricks on everybody, or reverse psychology type of thing. This leads us into the prequels. It was 32 BBY, and Jyn, at this point, considers Kenobi ready for the trials to become a Jedi Knight. And they head on the mission to negotiate with the Trade Federation. Oh, yeah. You're playing checkers while Yoda's playing chess with like 9 people at the same time. Now, you guys know the prequels, but in case you don't, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are sent out to negotiate with the Trade Federation that have established a blockade around the planet of Naboo. The meeting was a trap, as the head of the Trade Federation, Viceroy Newt Gunray, ordered the Jedi to be disposed of. Now, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan sensed what was going on and escaped the trap and tried to fight their way to the bridge, but there were just too many droids, and they end up discovering a droid army ready to invade Naboo. Now, they end up using one of the landing crafts to get to the surface. Then they have to make their way to Theed, where they pick up Jar Jar Binks along the way. But by the time they get to Theed, the Trade Federation had already taken over the city. So the 2 Jedi rescue Queen Amidala and some of her consorts and escape the planet in the Queen's starship. Of course, we find out later on that the one playing the Queen isn't really the Queen, and that Padme is the Queen. But while they're escaping, their hyperdrive gets damaged, and which forces them to land on Tatooine for repairs. And while searching for parts, the voice actor who played Jar Jar hinted that he might have a cameo in Obi-Wan. That would be awesome. I didn't hate Jar Jar Binks. It was a little annoying, but he wasn't as bad as the Ewoks for me. So while searching for the parts, Qui-Gon happened upon a young, Force-sensitive boy named Anakin. And, of course, Anakin helps him get the parts by pod racing. And eventually, after a brief scuffle with Darth Maul, they leave the planet and take Anakin with them. Now, upon returning to Coruscant with the Queen, Jin and Kenobi made their way to the Council, where they told them the mysterious attacker, who Qui-Gon believed to be a Sith Lord. The 3-hour real-time pod racing scene, you mean, yeah. The live video game. They also test Anakin and discover that he is very strong with the Force, but they believe he's too old to begin the training. Where Qui-Gon believes Anakin is the chosen one from the prophecies. And he says that he wants to take the boy on as his Padawan. And they're like, well, you've got a Padawan. He's like, no. He's ready to become a full knight. So you can test him, he'll pass, and I'll take on the boy. Well, they the Council kind of skates around it. Like, yeah, we'll talk about it. And then they send them back to Naboo with the real Queen to broker a deal. When they go back to Naboo, and she brokers a deal with the Gungan for assistance, and they try to retake the planet. But to do this, Anakin and a fleet of pilots have to take out the central control for the droid army. Now, Anakin wasn't supposed to do this, but he ended up hiding in one of the spaceships, and next thing you know, he's in deep space blowing shit up, which is likely when you're a kid. While all this is happening, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are able to track down Darth Maul, and in probably one of the most epic battle scenes in any of the Star Wars movies, Qui-Gon is killed. Spoiler. And Kenobi uses his master's lightsaber to slice Maul in half, and he falls down this big thing, and it really looked like he was dead. It looked like you weren't coming back from being sliced in half and dropped down a large tube. But he comes back. Still not sure how that works. Now, after the Battle of Naboo, Kenobi was promoted to Jedi Knight, and Kenobi swears to train Anakin as his master wanted. JD says, Maul did die. There's no way you can convince me that he survived. I'm not arguing with you. I was sure he was dead too. I will give Phantom Menace one thing. My niece and nephews loved it when they were kids, so it was popular in his target demo. Yeah. Phantom Menace was geared towards the same audience that Star Wars was. The difference was when Star Wars came out, at least, I was that age. Phantom Menace, that age group again. The problem is that most Star Wars fans aren't that age anymore. And as we get older, we want more sophisticated storytelling. And that's not really Star Wars. Or at least that's not really George Lucas. All right, so after the Battle of Naboo, Kenobi is promoted to Jedi Knight. Yoda reluctantly accepted his decision to train Anakin, and they would have many adventures together. But eventually, by 22 BBY, they would end up back on Coruscant protecting Senator Amidala at the behest of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. We all knew he was going to go evil. Did anybody not think that he wasn't the Emperor? And we all kind of knew going in that he was the Emperor. Anyway, following some assassination attempts on Padme's life. Now, Anakin is much older now and kind of love-struck with Padme now that he sees her again. Maul fell into a pillow warehouse next to an intensive care unit specializing in amputations. Hey, that's plausible. I could totally see that. Now, Padme has a plan to use herself as bait to try to figure out who is hunting her. And when another assassination attempt happens, Anakin is able to thwart the attempt, and they're able to track a droid back to the bounty hunter named Zam Wessel. But before they could get Zam to talk, she's killed by Jango Fett. And then the two Jedi split up. Anakin stays with Padme. Kenobi goes after tracking Jango. And this leads to a lot of weird stuff. Kenobi ends up on the planet of Kamino, a star system that had been basically erased from the archives. And then when he gets there, he's greeted by the Kaminoans, who pretty much just think, oh, the Jedi are here to check on their order. Well, it turned out this other Jedi had placed this order for a clone army that, and using basically the DNA from Jango Fett. Most of the Jedi have no idea what this is. And of course, this has to do with Palpatine and a rogue Jedi. But what happens is Kenobi then investigates, finds Jango, and they face off with Jango escaping in Slave One. He follows and ends up following him to the planet Geonosis, which is the Separatist Council's base. And that includes Count Dooku, who we had been hinting at already, who is... Darth Maul was Count Dooku's assistant, or I'm not sure how that works. I need a whiteboard to flowchart the Sith. Meanwhile, without his master around and his feelings for Padme growing, Anakin kind of becomes an easy target for Palpatine to corrupt. He manipulates the young Jedi as Anakin's having dreams and stuff, and about his mother and all this. But it's pretty kind of sad to watch him be manipulated by the Emperor, because you see where it's going. You see where, he started with this little kid, and now he's an adult. Well, he's not even, I don't even think he's an adult in this movie, which makes that whole Padme-Anakin relationship real creepy. But we see him starting to manipulate him. And you know what? Let's go ahead and take our last break, and we'll come back and we'll finish up on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Be right back.
Did you know that every experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out. Twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Get the inside scoop on everything happening at the experience every week. Join our mailing list by scanning the QR code at the bottom of the screen and then watching your email inbox.
Back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I see that JD has said that Anakin was supposed to be 17 in Attack of the Clones, and all I can think of is seeing Natalie Portman sing the Winger song, 17. He's only 17. Yeah, that would be funny. Okay, so getting back into the history, Kenobi sees all the Separatists on the planet, tries to send a signal out to Coruscant, but it's too far away. So he gets a signal to Anakin, who is with Padme. They come to help. They all get captured and are about to be executed in the arena. There are some monsters they have to fight. Then the Jedi show up and start fighting, and then more and more droids show up, and then the clone army shows up with Yoda, and we get this big, like, Apocalypse Now attack scene and wipe out all the Separatists. Count Dooku tries to escape. Anakin and Obi-Wan confront him and pretty much get their ass kicked to the point where Anakin loses an arm. And Yoda shows up to another epic fight scene as Yoda is just amazing in the scene, flying all over the place fighting. But Dooku ends up using the fact that Jedis care about people against him and put Kenobi and Anakin in danger, forcing Yoda to put his attention on there, and while Dooku escaped. Not a nice guy. Well, Dooku didn't win the fight, but he got out of there, and Anakin lost his arm, which kind of leads him towards that first cybernetic replacement. And from here, we see after this, the Clone Wars start, and they kind of start filling in this area. And we see a bunch of stuff between that time. Probably one of the most important, though, is a follow-up to what we talked about before, as Kenobi ends up back on Mandalore as it's being taken over, and Satine Kryze is killed. But yeah, so that's probably not only big for what makes Obi-Wan tick, but also what makes Bo-Katan Kryze tick. Pour one out for Satine. So if you're going to go back and watch any Clone Wars stuff to try to help out with either this or The Mandalorian, I would go back and focus on that first, because I think that's some of the biggest areas. Now, again, but there's a bunch. I mean, if you watch the Clone Wars, you know that there's a lot of stories with General Kenobi and Anakin, and Anakin ends up getting a Padawan named Ahsoka Tano. So the character who's going to show up in The Mandalorian, now her own series, shows up in the Clone Wars. Also, Padme and Jar Jar and the droids and all that stuff are involved. Now, jump ahead about 3 years, and the Republic, with the help of the Jedi, take on Count Dooku and the Separatists. With the new threat rising, the Jedi Council sends Obi-Wan, Kenobi, and Anakin to aid the captured Chancellor. And Anakin feels he is ready to be promoted to Jedi Master, and Obi-Wan is hunting down General Grievous. When Anakin has future visions of pain and suffering involving Padme, it's kind of the final piece that Palpatine needs to bring him over to the dark side by saying that, well, you can protect her as a Jedi, but I can help you protect her. The dark side can protect her and keep her safe forever. And this is what's needed to flip him, to turn him. And he goes down that path wholeheartedly, goes to the Jedi Temple with the orders to just kill everybody, because Darth Sidious at that point executes Order 66. And Anakin kills younglings and anybody else he finds in the Jedi Temple. Jedis are slaughtered all across the galaxy. Yeah, it's rough. And then you end up with Obi-Wan, who is able to keep from getting killed. ends up in a showdown with Anakin on the planet of Mustafar, along with Padme, who is at this point pregnant with Anakin's child. And he ends up, Obi-Wan has to fight this guy who basically has become a brother to him. And he gets the high ground. That's always important. And he ends up, taking off Anakin's legs and leaving him for dead on Mustafar, which was not a good idea. You should always finish it up. Don't just leave someone for dead. Finish it. But he gets off planet. And at this point, he doesn't know what happens to Anakin at all. Going into the season, he doesn't know what happens to Anakin. Padme on the ship gives birth but dies at the end of childbirth. There are 2 children, a girl and a boy. The girl is given to Bail Organa to raise as his own on Alderaan, while the boy Obi-Wan takes to Tatooine to be raised by Anakin's half-brother Owen Lars. And knowing the Jedi are being hunted and that he needs to kind of be close to protect Luke, Kenobi takes the name Ben and settles down in the desert, which is where the series picks up. Now, there are some stories that take place in that time period from the end of Revenge of the Sith and the start of Star Wars, of A New Hope. And even though that's the sweet spot that Kenobi's going to exist in, there are a couple stories that do exist there that are canonical, including one that has Jabba the Hutt sending out Black Chrysanthemum to find out who took out his tax collectors, his water tax collectors, and his Chrysanthemum goes after Owen, and Ben has to save him, and this is where Chrysanthemum gets a scar. Now, I don't know if that happens before or after what's going on here, or during. I mean, we've just met Black Chrysanthemum in Book of Boba Fett. Maybe he's going to pop up here. Don't know. But, maybe that's the event that gets the Jedi hunters. I can't remember the names, what they go by, the different brothers and the Grand Inquisitor, the Inquisitors, to go after Obi-Wan. That would be interesting. But and we know that at some point Kenobi has a final showdown with Maul while on Tatooine. So and he dies finally. So these are things that take place in this period. I think the death or the battle with Maul would be much later, while Chrysanthemum is probably around the same time. But we will have to see what stories and what era the Kenobi series specifically is going to cover. So I think that's a good primer for Kenobi. I mean, there are some other stories, like I said, for the Clone Wars. I don't know how important they are to Kenobi, as I kind of felt the Clone Wars was a little more focused on Anakin and then Ahsoka Tano and a little less on Kenobi. So I think, there were some stories like the Satine Kryze one, but overall I think his character changed a little less in the Clone Wars than Anakin did, and the introduction of Ahsoka Tano. So I think that's a good highlight of what you need going into the series, to see exactly what this Ben Kenobi is going to be like, this Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, all right, interesting question. Did Palpatine direct the Tuskens to raid Owen's farm? Did he send the visions to Anakin? I was thinking about that earlier when I was doing this recap. And my gut says yes. That seems exactly, those things were needed for Anakin to go down this path. So, yeah, I think that Palpatine played a role in all of that. Now, did he send the visions? It's possible. Did he direct the Tuscans? I think he probably did. Because if you think about it, that is a move that we haven't seen from the Tuscans in anything else. They'll attack lone travelers in the desert, but I don't see them invading someone's home. That seems slightly out of character as they've been described. With what we're seeing in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, they're much more like Native Americans or First Nationers or whatever you want to, however best to refer to them. Culturally wise, they're similar to that. So I don't necessarily see them as the type to go in just to kidnap or to take a hostage type thing. So I don't know for sure, but yeah, I think that's the right idea. I think Palpatine probably did have something to do with it. All right, guys, that's the show. That's me here for this week. Sunday night on Pop Go the Writers over on my YouTube channel, I am going to be joined by a new co-host who you may have met. He's been on the show once here. He's pops in on all the first episodes of the new Marvel shows, and that is writer Jim Beard, who has worked for Marvel and has done just a ton of stuff in the industry. He's going to be my new regular co-host, and we're changing the format slightly. We're dropping it from an hour-and-a-half show down to an hour, just because Jim is on the East Coast, so we're firing up the show at 9 o'clock. So keeping them till 10:30 seems a little extra cruel. Yeah, and remember to sign up for the mailing list. We got a giveaway going on for this weekend at the Cherry Capital Comic-Con, where you can find Kyle, and you should go up to him and ask him what happened with the llama. Did the charges get dropped? Find out what went on with the llama. Find Kyle at the show. All right, but check out our mailing list for, and film it. Definitely film it. And check out the mailing list to find out how you can win something from Kyle. Something good, because you can always win something bad from Kyle. Just saying. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Stick around for Miss Jen and What's in the Box. See you later.
Get the inside scoop on everything happening at the experience every week. Join our mailing list by scanning the QR code at the bottom of the screen and then watching your email inbox.